A lonely, exhausted woman seeks refuge in the forest, fleeing from a dangerous pursuer. She must escape before the powerful drug takes full effect and paralyzes her. The film opens in a couple's bedroom. Iris, struggling with insomnia, lies awake, her mind repeatedly visualizing a mountain. She gets out of bed, taking a small red towboat with her, and heads downstairs. There, she picks up a small pocket knife, leaves her phone on charge, gathers a few essential items, and exits the house. Getting into her car, she leaves her peaceful suburban neighborhood. At dawn, she arrives at a parking lot by the entrance of a forest park. Following a hiking trail, she walks to a high cliff edge. Here at a tree stands a memorial for her young son, who died after falling from this very cliff. Iris carves the first letter of his name into the tree trunk, next to the initials she once carved with her husband. She then walks to the cliff's edge, anxiously looking down. Suddenly, her thoughts are interrupted by a man named Richard, who starts a conversation, asking her awkward questions. To build trust, he shares a story about a tragic accident in which his car hit a wall, and his girlfriend, Chloe, died. They had argued shortly before, and he remembered her last words. Following the accident, he had spent 2 months on life support. His revelation prompts Iris to share about her son's death. After their conversation, Richard leaves her alone and begins his descent down the hill. Later, Iris catches up to him, and they return to the parking area together. She notices that Richard parked too close, making it difficult for her to open her door. Instead of waiting for him to move, she tries to squeeze through the narrow gap. At that moment, Richard approaches her from behind. Unexpectedly, he immobilizes her with a stun gun, binds her with plastic ties, and pushes her into the back seat. Iris regains consciousness and tries to use her smartwatch to call for help. Richard warns her that there is no reception in this area, mentioning that other victims tried the same thing. Casually, he also brought along her son's towboat from the memorial, but Iris remains undeterred. She pulls out a small pocket knife from her pocket and starts carefully sawing through the plastic ties, attempting to distract Richard with conversations about her son and Chloe. Once her hands are free, she lunges at him, but Richard retaliates, and the car, losing control, crashes into a tree. After the impact, they resume their struggle. Richard grabs her by the hair, but Iris fights back, attempting to strangle him with the seatbelt. He reclines the seat, receives a kick to the face, and pulls her closer. Iris grabs a knife sticking out of the seat and threatens him with it. But soon they both fall out of the car, ending up on opposite sides. Iris frees her legs from the ties and starts screaming for help. Richard, now standing, curses himself for not checking her pockets, but reassures himself that he has a backup plan. He had previously injected her with a drug that would paralyze her in 20 minutes. Richard describes the stages. First, her vocal cords will stop working. Then her fine motor skills will weaken, making it impossible to hold a knife, and soon after, her legs and other muscles will give out. Iris dashes into the forest, dropping the knife along the way. Richard, limping from the crash, slowly follows. She speeds up, weaving through dense thickets, hoping to find a hiding spot. Along the way, she repeats a finger exercise she once taught her son to help him learn to count. However, her fingers obey less and less, and her legs start to stumble. Despite her growing weakness, she continues to move forward while Richard leisurely trails her, taking his time. When her strength is nearly gone, Iris finds a hollow under tree roots and crawls inside. Staying as still as possible, Richard pauses, scanning the surroundings, but not seeing her, he moves further away. Unfortunately, luck is not on her side. She has hidden near an anthill, and the drug hasn't fully numbed her nerve endings. As the ants bite, she involuntarily makes a sound, catching her pursuer's attention. Fortunately, Iris manages to crawl to a nearby river, lies on her back, and tries to float downstream. Soon, she encounters submerged rocks that form rapids further down. As the waves crash, Iris nearly chokes, but gathering her last bit of strength, she manages to grab onto a log and hold on. Upon reaching the shore, Iris gasps for air, feeling her body gradually becoming unresponsive. She lies face down in the grass, able only to blink. Nearby, a farmer named Bill is mowing the lawn. Noticing her, he carefully turns her over and, after asking a few questions, gradually realizes from her blinking that she is hurt. Bill decides to call for help, but first goes to get a wheelbarrow to help Iris reach the house. Just as they enter, a knock sounds at the door. Seeing the frightened look on her face, Bill senses something is wrong. At the door stands Richard, claiming he had an accident and is looking for his missing wife, who he says is injured. Bill, now cautious, closes the door, but Richard manages to enter, pretending to feel unwell. He glances around and only sees the empty wheelbarrow. Iris is hiding behind the sofa. Richard then begins a heart-wrenching story about how his emotionally unstable wife caused the accident and ran off. He explains that if she's found, she'll be sent to treatment, which he as a caring husband wants to avoid. He describes how she shuts down during episodes, unable to move or speak. Richard's story seems to convince Bill, who is about to admit that the woman is nearby. At that moment, Richard's phone rings in his pocket, the same phone he claimed to have lost in the woods. Realizing he's been tricked, Bill asks him to leave. Sensing he's been exposed, Richard changes his tone to threatening and demands that Bill reveal where Iris is. Bill, remaining calm, lies saying that she's in the shed and invites Richard to go get her and leave. But before leaving, Richard asks for Bill's phone, supposedly to prevent him from calling the police. Bill hands it over and then suddenly pushes Richard against the cabinet, seizing the moment to call the police. A fight breaks out. Bill, strong and experienced, lands a few blows, but Richard finds a knife on the floor and injures him. Bill collapses on his attacker, but Richard stabs him several more times. Realizing that the police will arrive soon, Richard searches the shed, and not finding Iris there, decides to set the house on fire. Iris, watching his actions, tries to attract attention by tapping on the floor, but Richard thinks he's hearing things. He takes Bill's truck keys and a clean shirt to cover the bloodstains, douses the house in gasoline and sets it on fire, leaving Iris trapped inside. Once back in the truck, Richard notices strange movement from the blinds. It's Iris, tugging on the cord, trying to send a signal. Richard goes back into the blazing house, finds her, and drags her out, placing her in the passenger seat. On the way, he admits that because of her, he has killed a man for the first time, as his previous victims were all women. At that moment, he gets a call from his daughter and wife, telling him they plan to visit his cabin for the weekend. Frustrated that he won't be able to fully enjoy his plans with Iris, Richard continues driving. They stop at a gas station as fire trucks and ambulances rush past toward the black column of smoke rising from the burned house. Richard, putting a cap on Iris to conceal her face, heads to the cashier to pay for the gas. While he's gone, Iris, whose weak arm is slowly regaining feeling, tries to unfasten her seatbelt. She falls against the side window, breathing heavily. A boy and his mother outside notice her, but before they can act, Richard returns. Back at the scene of the crash, where the damaged car remains, Richard takes plastic ties and a syringe from the trunk. He changes into clean clothes and attaches a tow cable he found in Bill's truck bed. Meanwhile, Iris tries moving her arm, feeling some control, returning to her movements. At that moment, a police car pulls up. The officer, having received a report from witnesses at the gas station, wants to check if everything is all right. Richard explains in a friendly manner that his wife, after losing their son and sinking into a deep depression, has turned to heavy drinking, and he's just going to take the car. The officer notices a wound on Richard's forehead and asks about its origin, to which Richard struggles to respond. At that moment, Iris cracks the window and whispers help. Spotting zip ties and a syringe under a shirt in the car, the officer reaches for his weapon, but Richard unexpectedly hits him with a towing hook, knocking him out. Richard then puts the officer's body in the car, douses it with gasoline, sets it on fire, and takes the officer's gun. Richard continues driving with Iris, who begins to regain consciousness and tries to speak with him. She recalls his story about the accident and the death of Chloe, suspecting that this event broke him and led to his current state. During the conversation, it becomes clear that Chloe passed away after the accident, with Richard Dinger witnessing her last moments. Her final words to him were, "Thank you." Her passing affected him so deeply that he felt a divine presence, as if he were enlightened. Iris decides to appeal to his emotions, mentioning his love for his family and especially his daughter, trying to convince him that if he's caught, he'll never see her again. She reminds him that she doesn't know his real name, so he could let her go and return to his family. But Richard decides not to leave a witness alive. He drives her to an exit leading to a lake. Unlocking her restraints, he drives to the pier with a boat. At this moment, Iris stabs him in the leg with a hidden syringe filled with a paralyzing substance. However, she doesn't have the strength to fully inject it. Richard smirks, removes the syringe, and explains that her energy surges are too inconsistent. Richard drags her immobilized body into the boat and heads to the middle of the lake. As he prepares to throw her overboard, Iris, sobbing, asks for one last request: to take out a tow ship from her pocket, a memory of her deceased son. Richard reluctantly agrees and leans down to fulfill her request. At that moment, Iris grabs a knife from his belt and deals a serious blow to his jaw. Staggering, Richard pulls the knife out and then reaches for his gun, but Iris rocks the boat, causing him to lose his balance, drop the gun, and fall overboard. Still alive, he tries to get back on board, but Iris goes to the bow where the gun is and shoots him. Richard leaves the girl alone, but the boat is damaged and begins taking on water. Iris, still not fully recovered, cannot get up and remains in the boat as the water level slowly rises. She stays at the bottom of the vessel while a wounded Richard swims toward the shore, leaving a bloody trail. As the water approaches her face, Iris holds her breath, preparing for the inevitable. Soon, the boat sinks with her inside, leaving the tow ship floating on the waves. However, after a moment she resurfaces and, summoning her last bit of strength, swims to the pier. Climbing onto the boards, Iris sees Richard struggling to reach the shore nearby. She approaches him and, watching him gasp for breath, thanks him for making her realize the value of life. She leaves him on the shore, and the movie ends. Thank you for watching, stay with us, and see you next time.